Amy Pascal and the other people over at Sony did recently confirm that Miles Morales is indeed coming to live action. And we don't know a whole lot of details about it, but they basically just teased, on their whole press tour for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales is the future. They're really invested in this character, concluding his story in animated form with this franchise of Spider-Verse films, and then moving it into a live action adaptation of the character at some point in the near future as well. So that obviously is really exciting. We could talk about casting and all that stuff, but I want to talk about for a second how this would actually work. Like, where would Miles Morales fit in here? Because there's a couple ways they could go about doing it. They could just give him a solo film in the Sony universe and maybe have him be the Spider-Man of the Sonyverse, have him be the Spider-Man that fights Tom Hardy's Venom and Jared Leto's Morbius and Aaron Taylor Johnson's Kraven. That is something you could do. I feel like that would be a bit of a waste of Miles Morales, but it's Sony, so I wouldn't be surprised that's the route they took. But what I think is more likely and what most fans want and what I think would be just the best option here is to bring Miles into the MCU, because clearly they're also heavily invested in Tom Holland's Spider-Man as well. We just concluded the first trilogy with the Home trilogy, Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home, and that is of course going to continue in a second trilogy, the College trilogy, with Spider-Man 4, which there's been updates here and there, but with the writer strike going on right now, it's a couple years away. But Spider-Man 4, it is happening. Tom Holland is returning. He is our main Peter Parker of the MCU. And it would be so easy to just incorporate Miles into this universe. Have him be a part of this second trilogy. Have him be a friend of Peter. And then eventually, maybe by the end of this trilogy, Miles gets his powers, he becomes his own Spider-Man, and then it spins off into his own live-action trilogy franchise, whatever the case may be. Because, if you look at it, we actually already know that Miles Morales does exist in the MCU. Because in Spider-Man Homecoming, all the way back in 2017, we did get a cameo appearance from Donald Glover as Aaron Davis, of course, the uncle of Miles Morales in the comics. So there's already confirmation right there. But actually, I believe it was in a deleted scene where he specifically name dropped his nephew Miles. So there's that as well. Also, very recently, there was something with Spider-Man No Way Home. Of course, at the end of that movie, when Peter is all alone, like everybody died, nobody knows who he is anymore. He got his apartment. There, I think it was like in a Portuguese version of the film or something like that, but somebody was looking at the subtitles on Spider-Man No Way Home, and supposedly there was somebody in the background after Peter shut the door, somebody said something about Miles. So Miles Morales could actually possibly be, just based off that scene, actually the neighbor of Peter Parker in the MCU with his brand new apartment. So Miles exists in the MCU. And when it comes to Donald Glover specifically, again, he played Aaron Davis in Homecoming. That's a character that could totally return in the future and actually already has. Quick spoilers for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse if you've not seen it yet, but we did get a cameo of Donald Glover as the Prowler. And there's a little bit of confusion here. Is this the same version from the MCU? Is this just a different variant? We don't know for sure. I feel like it was somebody confirmed that it was the MCU version. So that's just what I'm going to go with. But, it hasn't been confirmed in the movies yet. So we'll see. But does this mean that Aaron Davis in the MCU is the Prowler already? Is that something we could see explored in this next franchise, in Spider-Man 4 possibly? I think so. I think that would make a lot of sense and would be the perfect way to tie this into that Spider-Verse trilogy and to tie Miles into all of this as well. Because we have a new report coming from Alex over the Cosmic Circus, a very reliable source that has officially teased that yes, Donald Glover will reprise his role as Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler, in the MCU for Spider-Man 4. Spider-Man 4 is a movie we don't know a whole lot about yet, but I think this is something that makes a lot of sense. Again, especially if you are wanting to tie Miles into this, bring in Prowler, get all that setup going on, whether Miles actually shows up in this film or not, it would make sense. You could have Prowler be like, maybe not a main villain, but at least a villain in this first movie of this trilogy. And then we see him reappear in the next couple films. And when you do introduce Miles, eventually you could have his redemption arc and have him become more of a hero, maybe even fight alongside the two Spider-Man. I think that would be something really cool of going about and doing this. I mean, Donald Glover as Prowler specifically, as I talked about in my spoiler review for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, is just such a cool thing because he has such a history with this character. Because for those who don't know, Miles Morales as a character in the comics was created and based on and inspired by the real life Donald Glover, because Donald Glover, he wanted to play Spider-Man. There was this whole big campaign on the internet. Obviously didn't end up happening. We got Andrew Garfield instead, another white guy. But Brian Michael Bendis decided, you know what, let's make a black Spider-Man in the comics. Miles Morales, boom, there you go. And so Donald Glover even actually voiced the character in his first ever animated appearance on Ultimate Spider-Man. He voiced Miles Morales, and then that was, again, another layer of the reasoning of why Donald Glover was the one playing Aaron Davis in Spider-Man Homecoming. So to bring him back like they did in Across the Spider-Verse, especially as the Prowler, was just such a cool thing. And now to really utilize that character, that version of the character, I think just there's so much potential there, and it would just be so cool to see. It's such perfect casting as well. I really hope that this is something they pursue. And it could also tie in, even aside from the whole Miles thing, to the story of the other villains in Spider-Man 4 as well. Because again, we don't know a whole lot about this film. We don't even know the title of it. We're just calling it Spider-Man 4. But Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, it's going to be very different from the Home trilogy. Because of course, that was very early days Peter, as we kind of saw with No Way Home, it was like a 3-movie origin. It wasn't until the end of No Way Home when he got the whole his Uncle Ben canon moment with, of course, Aunt May's death, with the whole with great power there must also come great responsibility. That movie and that whole trilogy was his Spider-Man origin. And prior to that, he was getting help from Iron Man and Nick Fury, and he was Iron Boy Jr. and all that stuff. But now in this next trilogy, we're getting our classic street level friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. No more Spider-Man going to space. Well, actually, we'll see about Secret Wars and stuff like that. But grounded, street level, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Going back to the classic Spectacular Spider-Man is a great example of how well that can be portrayed. I really want to see something like that done. Some people have even said like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they actually called the Spider-Man 4 movie The Spectacular Spider-Man? That would be awesome. I would love that. But to have him just fighting these street level villains is perfect. And the way that things have been set up, the way that we're hearing things are going to be set up, and with what is there and what rumors are swirling around and all that stuff, it looks like possibly Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin could be featured not only in Spider-Man 4, but this whole Spider-Man trilogy. Because, of course, Kingpin is a big villain in the comics. And obviously, nowadays, most people associate him with Daredevil because, the Netflix series, and he's going to be in Echo, and he's going to be in Daredevil Born Again and everything. But Kingpin, we've already heard, is going to be having a huge role. He's going to be like the Thanos of the street level Earth side of the MCU. And so he's going to have a big role. And actually in the comics, originally before Kingpin really even was a big Daredevil villain, he was more of a Spider-Man villain in the first place. So it makes sense to have Kingpin in this franchise. He's the type of guy that, we've heard rumors he's going to be running for mayor in the MCU and all that stuff. It just makes sense that he would be a really great behind-the-scenes villain for this Spider-Man trilogy, where he could be funding all these villains to be basically his muscle and go out there and try and take down heroes like Spider-Man. And obviously we've always wanted to see the Spider-Man Daredevil crossover. We had that, of course, with Charlie Cox's return in No Way Home, but to have them actually team up as Spider-Man and Daredevil, that could be something we see in Spider-Man 4 at least some point in this trilogy. It just makes sense. It works. And with those rumors of Kingpin running for mayor and his whole kind of like end goal, his super objective as being mayor in the MCU and as being this Thanos of the street level Earth side of the MCU, is that he wants to get rid of all these vigilantes. So not just Daredevil, but Spider-Man, Kate Bishop, all these other street level heroes, Punisher, everybody like that. That's his mission, is to get rid of them. So it makes sense that in Spider-Man 4 and in this Spider-Man franchise, we could be seeing some of that really come into play where, I mean, it's like a Spider-Man classic where you have, you know, a mysterious benefactor, sometimes it's Kingpin, sometimes like in Spectacular Spider-Man, it's Norman Osborn or it's Tombstone. You got these really powerful bad guys who are kind of just pulling the strings behind the scenes, and they're just hiring these criminals off the street, giving them superpowers, giving them tech, and really souping them up to take down these vigilantes. So that could be, like, it makes so much sense that that would be what Kingpin is doing in this franchise. And, you know, there's already the villains that are there that this could tie into. I mean, obviously, Matt Gargan, have Michael Mando return as the character, finally become the Scorpion. Literally another thing that was set up in 2017 with Spider-Man Homecoming that has gone nowhere so far could finally come to fruition in Spider-Man 4, as well as, you know, the topic of this video, Prowler. We saw Aaron Davis, also, again, back in 2017, and then also in Across the Spider-Verse. Maybe, you know, if that is the MCU Prowler that we saw in Across the Spider-Verse, maybe Kingpin is the one that gave him that suit, because we saw literally in Homecoming when Aaron Davis was there, that first scene he appeared in, he was buying tech from Vulture's gang. So it makes sense that he would be taking tech and taking all these suits and all this stuff from different villains, and Kingpin would make sense to be one of them. I think this would be a great way of going about doing this Spider-Man franchise. Again, tying things in so perfectly, bringing back these villains from the first trilogy, the home trilogy, and just setting so much stuff up here. It's the potential is there. We'll see. Again, we don't know a whole lot about this movie or this franchise, but so much could happen here, and I'm just so excited for this. And I think if we see Aaron Davis, the Prowler in the MCU, it should be the Donald Glover version, hopefully the same version we just saw in Across the Spider-Verse, and to have him throughout this trilogy and appear in Spider-Man 4 would be really awesome. Again, it just makes so much sense. So anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about this rumor, this report, that Donald Glover will return as Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler, for Spider-Man 4? And what else do you want to see in this movie and this whole college trilogy? So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit that subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.